I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, and I'm located in Southgate, Kentucky.
And I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery in Monroe, Washington. And welcome to Wheel Talk.
All right, so we're getting started here. We're live. So thanks everybody for listening. This episode is going to be the first in a series of episodes that we're going to do about ways to sell your work. This format we're going to do with Becca and I. In the future, we may change this up and kind of each do our own thing based on, the ways that we sell our work a lot. Becca has a lot to talk about for wholesale because she has a lot of orders in the future. And,
not a lot.
She has more experience in wholesale than I do, for sure. And then we'll do other topics of ways you can sell your work. So this episode, we're going to be talking about how you can sell your work through art shows, because that's honestly the majority of my sales and the way that I like to sell my pots. Becca does her art shows throughout the summer. I don't know if she would consider that the majority of the way she does her sales. Probably since she started, it's probably been the majority, but
it's the funnest way that I do my sales, I think. That has to count for something.
See, I wouldn't have thought you would have answered that. I would have thought you would not have enjoyed the selling in person as much from what you talked about.
No, I don't enjoy the selling in person. I just like getting away from my studio. I just like leaving and like having a weekend to myself.
Okay. Gotcha. To yourself with a bunch of other people coming to talk to you and see you in person that don't know you. But honestly, I mean, it can be fun because you have just these low effort conversations with people that are just kind of, it's a short-term thing. They're not taking a ton of attention away from the thing that you're doing in the studio and kind of feels distracting or whatnot. So
yeah, I have a really good story actually about the pros of selling at a show that happened to me this week, like today. So I'll tell that later. But yeah, we should.
Okay.
We have Ryan with his lovely list making qualities.
Yes. I got ahead of the game here, so
he's always ahead of the game. Don't let him fool you. Ryan made a pros and cons list, and yeah, so we're gonna kind of go through it and then talk about it and see, and just
right. So this is kind of just from our perspective as well. So there could be things that we call pros that you might see as a con because you're a total introvert and you hate people.
I mean, Becca.
So this is the kind of format that we're going to try and do for these because it's kind of an easier way to digest it, and it's not so back and forth throughout the pros and cons. So I guess we can just start with some of the pros. I mean, for me, the best pro is that you get the one-on-one feedback from customers and you get immediate insight from them. And that could be direct comments about your work. Whether it's like, oh, I really love your color scheme you've got going on, or I really love this form or this glaze, that, or like what's actually selling, or,
right.
What they talk about, like what they plan to use this thing for, or what they're looking for in your certain piece of work resonated for them to meet this need they had. Stuff like that is kind of what I really enjoy the most, I think.
Definitely. When I was learning, my teacher was like, well, I don't like this. He'd be like, I don't personally like this, but you have to see what your customers say. And the best way to do it is to do it at a show, because especially if you kind of I take kind of a backseat approach to selling, which Ryan takes like the front of the booth approach. Because he's good at talking to people. And I'm good at talking to people too, but I just don't like to. And so I kind of I love to listen to the customers when they're talking to their friends. I have a 10 by 20 booth, so I have a little bit more space to do that. If I was in a 10 by 10, I wouldn't have that space. But, a lot of the reason why my handle is flat in the way it is because over the years, I've heard people say, "Oh, well, I like this. Now I'm starting to make my handles a little bit bigger because I've noticed that people are like, I like to put my entire hand in the handle. You know, I make my wine glasses a certain way because over the years, certain things have come up, and that's been very specific, and so it's been huge in making my pieces the way they are now, which are highly engineered pieces. If I want, like, you know, I want them to be highly engineered at least.
Yeah, and a lot of like art and stuff that you make is very tangible. So you're going to get the best sense as a customer when you can see it in person and you can feel it and say like, "Oh, this is really heavy," or "This fits my hand well," if we're talking about a mug. And they really appreciate the being able to like pick it up, look at it, flip it upside down, turn it, like picture themselves using it. And that's honestly one of the better selling points as well to make the sale, is that they get to physically touch it.
Totally. I also think that it creates a longer, I don't know if this was in your pros list, but it creates, shows create long lasting customers. Because not only if you go to the same show every single year, like let's say, you know, you go to, Ryan goes to the Art in the Park in, is it in Kentucky or something like that? Well,
It's in
you're in
Bellevue,
Kentucky, but
Kentucky. Yep.
in Bellevue, Kentucky. He goes to the Art in the Park every year at Bellevue, Kentucky. And I'll bet you already have people that are coming back and they're like, "Oh, I bought stuff from you last year and now I'm here again." And, you know, if you remember
Right.
them, that's even a super pro. But you create these people that you almost have this tiny little relationship with, and they will buy from you for years and years and years. And that's something that I really enjoy. I have people that come into my booth that have been coming into my booth every single year on the wine walk with their 4 friends, and they get things from me, you know, every single year I see them. And
Exactly.
it's just kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that ties into that is that, you know, you are your best representation of your work. So you can talk about the process. You can talk about the decisions of why you did something, or, you know, the story behind it. People love stories. So if you can tell stories about your work or how you discovered this thing, like I make yarn bowls. I've not knit, well, I have knit in the past for a project in school at one point, but the
Oh.
yarn bowl story, people see that and they are like, "Oh, that's a great idea. Where did you come up with that?" Because they don't know if I knit or not. If I was a female, it'd probably be more intuitive that I knit, and that's why I make them. But so it's a story. It's a moment for me to tell a story that my mother-in-law asked for one of these like 3 years ago, and I made one because she saw it online and she asked me if I could do that, and then I did, and then her friends wanted some, so I made a bunch more, and then I started selling them at shows and people liked them, and then I reached out to some local yarn stores or yarn shops to sell them, and I sell them in 2 yarn shops now. So that kind of gives you a
Right.
story behind like where the inception of that idea came from. It's not you don't get that if you just see a piece at a shop
Yeah.
or online. You don't get that backstory.
Also, along that line, I also find that it's really, really wonderful to. One of my biggest pet peeves, especially within the pottery community, is when something looks super amazing on camera and then you get it in the mail and it does not look the way that it looked when you got it. Like when you saw it
Yeah.
online.
So it's a little
Like,
deceiving. There's parts that you miss out because you can't physically pick it up. You don't know that it's heavy in a
right.
photo,
Yeah,
or
or
the
that
colors
there's
aren't
like
as
these little
vibrant
tiny
because they
scratches on the
adjusted it.
bottom that would, you know, or these like little tiny scratches on the bottom that would totally kind of mess you up, or mentally, you know, like I'm a very persnickety Tory
Right.
sort of person, and if I'm gonna pay $50 for a mug, I don't need it to be perfect, but I definitely want it to be well crafted. And I would
Mm-hmm.
hope that when people come into my booth, they can see that. And you know, I don't want somebody to buy something online and be disappointed because they thought it was something else. That's why I prefer not to sell online personally, but that's another story.
Mm-hmm. Especially with the mug. people love their handle to fit their hand perfectly, and if you get it online, you can't, like the ounces and the size by the dimensions, but that's not really the best gauge in relation to your hand. Like, you need to physically
Yeah.
feel it to know how it fits. So that's a good point. Another pro that I had on here was opportunities for other ways to, make connections with either other shows that people are hosting or, shop or gallery owners that are kind of walking these shows looking for pots or something that you make that catches their eye that they're like, I would like that in my shop, or I'm looking for a wholesale orders or something like that, and I really love this thing. So I think the opportunities to get in front of people that are coming to these shows looking for stuff like that, the number of people that you get in front of and the number of opportunities that come about from that are just going to increase if you're out in front of a lot of people at these kind of shows. It's not just customers coming to buy one-off things for their home.
Yeah, some of my best wholesale customers are from them walking shows. Some of my most consistent ones.
Right. And I've even got I had a crappy show earlier this year in February, and I've told this story in the past. I pay like $75 for the booth. I end up selling about $250 worth. So it wasn't like an amazing show or anything. It was just kind of like a meh. And I got a custom order from it for like 5 or 6 of these chip and dip bowls that and she was willing to pay $75 a piece for them. So I got a whole bunch of business from that one show that she saw me at when it turned out to be a crappy day sales wise, but the potential for that long-term customer that wanted something, for a few $100s, over time is worth the show to me. So you don't get some of those opportunities if you're not in front of people constantly at these kind of shows.
Totally. Oh my gosh, there was one show that I paid like $500 for. In Seattle, it's hard to find shows less than like $300. But I paid $500 and there was a wholesale show at the end, which there are these types of shows where they're specifically for wholesale people to come in and then buy wholesale from you. And I got one customer from that, and they're pretty steady. They order like twice a year, $450 each time. And they're very, they're very consistent. And, I've probably made $2,000 just from that customer over the years from that one show that I thought that I did terribly at. But
exactly,
lo and behold,
that's always a great feeling when you get those opportunities. I mean, you're also going to get the questions at shows about custom orders that maybe you're turned off from as well. Yeah. I mean, you kind of get both of those in there. So, but I mean, the more opportunities and things that you get in person with other people, I mean, the more chance you have for a good one. I mean, for every bad one, you could have, or for every good one, you could have like 5 or 6 bad ones. But I mean, you got to kind of get those numbers up so that you have those interactions in order to get to the good ones,
Oh, can I tell my story about my fun interaction? This ties in real good.
Yes.
Okay, so this last weekend, I sold a cup out of my seconds section. I have a huge booth, and in one of the bottom shelves, there's my seconds spot, and there's not very many cups in there, but they're the ones that I find after I pull them out of the kiln and take them up there and don't realize that they've got some errors in them. And so I put a wine glass in there, and it just had some glaze defects, and I didn't want to refire it. And so this lady bought it on Saturday or Sunday, and then on Tuesday she messages me on Instagram. I had forgotten to give her a card because I'm that person, and she found me through the grapevine. She searched Leavenworth Pottery, and she was like, I love that wine glass so much. Are you going to be there Sunday? I want to buy a bunch. And I was like, I won't be there Sunday, but I can get some to you. And So what we ended up doing was my friend went to my van and ransacked my van and got 8 wine glasses out, and she's taking them to the show on Saturday and dropping them off with the lady, and then I'm invoicing the lady, and she's just gonna pick them up on her way through. And she wanted
Wow.
8. That wine glass was half off of 17, so it was 8.50, and that's I think she probably bought something else too, but 8.50, and then she liked it so much that she just bought $120 worth of wine glasses.
Wow.
I
So
know.
she bought it. She bought it because of the shape and the way it felt in her hand and stuff. Not so much like the glaze she really loved, even
Mm-mm,
though it had deflects. Wow.
exactly. So that's another,
Nice.
that's those weird things that can happen at shows that are really
Yeah.
cool.
That's why you should hand out your business card. Don't give
P.S.
them too much. Don't give them too much work to find you because most people would give up.
I know.
But
Thankfully,
she
it's
was
a small town.
persistent.
I usually put my business card in there, but I guess I forgot.
All right, maybe this ties into branding. This is the best at shows. You have the best way of branding yourself because you get the choice 100% to decide how
Thanks,
you want to
Ryan.
brand your booth, how you want your shelves to be set up, how you want your signage, what your business cards look like, all that kind of thing. What your bagging and all that looks like. That's all part of your brand, and you get to decide all that at a show. Because at shows, you normally just get a 10 by 10 space that you're renting for the day or 2 days or whatever, and you get to put every single thing in there and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, it's a good way to build your brand too, to see what people respond to and to see, how people react. Like, if I hand them my business card and they're like, "This is really cool," then I know that I'm doing something right because it's a split-second reaction, you know? And, but yeah, I think it's also a really good way to, for shows, you always have like downtimes, when people aren't there. And I find that to be a really good way to like think about your brand or think about your business card or whatever and redesign something new while you're there, because then you're thinking about it right then. It's not like you go home and you have to think about all these billion other things. You are literally stuck in that position and
Right.
you can't do anything else, so you might as well do it. That's where I do a ton of my designing.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah, but we have a lot of
I'm
downtime.
someone that I'm someone that stands up the whole time and tries to not look down so that I can make eye contact with people when they come in and all that stuff, so I don't feel like I'm neglecting them and all that kind of thing.
You go to shows that people actually come into your booth all the time now. My shows have like literally, literally, we have shows that sometimes there's like 2 hours where somebody doesn't buy something, and so you just like walk
Wow.
around. Sometimes we walk down to the river and jump in the river if it's too hot. Like, you know, we just tell the
So
person next to
Becca's
us to wash
experience
them.
with shows may not be your typical experience at shows. You can't just leave
I,
your booth and go get a dip in the pool.
I
Typically.
never said I was. I never said I was normal. I'm sorry. I I do have a very different experience with shows because my show is extremely unique. Um,
Right.
so that's why we're listening to Ryan.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned about business cards, one thing that I always get here, I don't know if it's just my area or whatnot, but people always ask, are you local? Where are you from? So, like in my first business card, I didn't put Southgate, Kentucky on my business card. I just put my
Mm,
name and my phone number and email. And then they grew over time and I started putting my name and the city that I'm from and all that stuff, my social media information, like all that stuff got added after because you do all this work
totally.
and then people ask you those questions, so you're like, okay, maybe I build my location based on my um, into my brand or into my booth signage or something like that, because people at the shows that I go to, they always ask that. They're always like, where are you
Yeah.
from, where are you located? And that's just a thing. I don't know if it's because they want to support local people. They, like, if I said Ohio or Kentucky, they're like, okay, good. But if I said like Michigan, they would be like, oh, well, he's not local, so maybe I'm less likely to support somebody because they're not local. I don't know. Maybe
I
I'm just overthinking
also
it, but
I also always ask where they're from. Um, you
see, I
know,
don't do that.
I
I
have a
just assume they're all
ritual.
local, but maybe.
I have a ritual when I'm packing up stuff because I have to send people off to a central cashier, so I'm always going, so you're going to the central cashier, blah 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 blah, and then I go while I'm wrapping, so where are you guys from? And that way I can get a feel of who they are and where they're from. And if they're from Monroe, I'm like, oh hey, like I have a shop in Monroe, or if they're from some,
Oh, that's great.
I can because I have a storefront, so I really want people to come to my storefront, right? So if I can find out where they're from, I can connect to them in some sort of a way and then talk to them. And it's also a little bit more memorable. Um, the They ask where I'm from all the time. That's true. I have Monroe on my business card, but for sure, I always, always, always ask where they're from.
That's a good point. I should probably do that, and that could help
Yeah,
with if you have your work in other shops or something. If they say they're from
absolutely.
this area, and you say, "Oh, well, if you're looking for my work more often, have you checked out Indigenous Gallery in East Walnut Hills in Cincinnati?" Like
Exactly.
maybe they live in that area, and you could say, "Hey, they have a lot of really good artists there, besides just my stuff." And then you're kind of talking up the other makers as well as um, a place that they could find your stuff on a regular basis. So
Totally.
I'm going to start doing that.
You should do it as a ritual right while you're wrapping. I find that that's the best.
Rachel normally wraps everything for me,
Well,
but
fine.
we can do that.
Fine.
I can still do it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel is Ryan's wife, and she's very gracious to go to all the shows with him.
Yes. Um, let's see. Let's get one more in here for the pros, and then we'll. We didn't talk about money yet, but I mean, at shows you handle all the profits. You get all the profits from the shows, so
Except
there's
for
no middle person.
2.7%.
Yeah, except for any credit card transaction fees or whatever that you have, and taxes, of course. But you're not paying someone a percentage of your sales because
So true.
they're selling it for you or whatnot, or like if you're selling online, Etsy will take a percentage of it and stuff like that. So you handle all the money and you get all the profits from that. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up our pros. We could probably go to the cons here while we're talking about money. The flip side of that is you have to handle all the money. Whether
Yeah.
it's actually the point of sale part where you have to, have a bunch of cash on hand with a money box and keep it secure and all that. And, having a Square or PayPal or whatever, those credit card readers to handle the credit card transactions. You got to have all that set up and keep track of transactions that way. And then the bookkeeping that goes with all of that kind of thing.
Here, I'm going to interject too because, okay, I just want to say a few things about PayPal and all of the different credit card readers that you have. If you are in a state that you pay sales taxes per county and you're going from place to place to place, I highly recommend Square. The I found with PayPal it was really hard to figure out where my taxes were going, like what taxes at what place, especially if you're going to different shows, you're moving around. So you're going to have a different tax code for every single show that you're going to. If you don't know anything about taxes, we're going to have a podcast soon about that. I'm not a professional by any means, but I can tell you who to talk to. And just so you all know, a lot of people love PayPal. I think it's horrid, but I really like Square's interface and I like the way they do their reports and their bookkeeping, and it also hooks directly into QuickBooks Online without any issues if you set it up correctly. So that's also one thing about when you're handling the money, and that's really important.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the. I use Square personally as well. I like it for the analytics and the transactions and reporting that Becca said, interface and all that good stuff. I know on Square you can have multiple tax, like sales tax locations. So you just flip switches for on and off. So if I'm in Kentucky, I'll just flip on the on switch for 6% sales tax, and it does it for every transaction there on out until I flip it to something else or turn it off or whatever. And then I can do the same for like Cincinnati or Ohio. Right. Because you don't want to like stack up the sales tax of 6% and 7% or whatever for both areas. And then, yeah, I'm not familiar with the PayPal interface. Is it something like that, but you only have one number you can adjust, and you have to like change it every time if you have different sales tax?
Say that again.
So on PayPal, I'm not familiar with that interface. Do you have something similar where you get one sales tax percentage number and then you have to change it? You can't like save them based on the location and stuff like that and toggle them?
I believe so. That's how it used to be, at least. I could be wrong, but from when I was doing PayPal, you couldn't. The problem with it was you could save the taxes, but it never gave you a report at the end of the quarter of where those taxes were. And so you couldn't separate it out. So ideally you want to report at the end of the quarter saying, hey, in Kentucky, I spent this much money. In Tennessee, I spent this much money. In Colorado, I spent this much money. So, or whatever counties you're in. And if they don't, then you're going to have to be working a lot harder to try and find your sales taxes. Like, QuickBooks does it for me, and I just did my taxes in less than 5 minutes while I was talking to my bookkeeper today. So nice. It can be extremely easy, but sometimes it makes it really hard. Also, switching topics, Ryan, have you ever showed up to a show and you forgot to get change?
No. Did you think I was going to say yes? I mean,
no.
Do you know me? Do you even know me, Becca? What's up with this?
I just wanted to see your reaction. How many times do you think I've showed up at this show and forgot to take money?
I mean, probably more than one hand. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've definitely scavenged. The worst shows are the ones on Sundays when no banks are open. Then you have to go to Safeway and get change at the Safeway. I've also gone to a show and forgotten all of my bags. I had to go to Albertsons and pay him like $2 for a stack of plastic bags.
Oh my gosh. That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, she's just going to go to a grocery store and just steal a bunch of plastic bags.
Yeah, that happened.
Yep. I haven't forgot those. I mean, I forgot to restock them sometimes. And, yeah, if I forget to restock, I might be low, but I usually just deal with it. But yeah, all my money just stays in a cash box. I have one cash box that I use for all my shows. I've got all the bills in there. I got all the change in there. And, my Square stays in there, Square Reader and all that stuff. So I don't usually have to, turn over any of that. Do you take cash out of your drawer at the store and that becomes your change box, or do you have a separate one for the shows?
I haven't done a show where I had to take money for a long time. But like I said before, my show is a central cashier.
That's
so
right.
We don't actually deal with any of the money. But when I did do shows, I actually prefer a cash bag. It's just a zippered bag. And I prefer that because that way I can take it with me, because Rachel always goes to your shows with you. So there's usually probably always somebody at the booth. I don't always have somebody at my booth, and sometimes you have to take like a bathroom break or go get some water or whatever, or food. And so I like to be able to stuff it in my sweatshirt and walk out, because I'd rather than steal a mug than steal the money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mine's a little bulkier, so it's not as easy to do that.
Yeah,
and the fanny packs are now in, so you can just have a fanny pack and wear that now. They call them something else now. I don't know, utility belts or...
Who even knows? I also like wearing aprons, and then I'll just fold up money and stick them in the pockets and not even use the bag
Nice.
sometimes. I'm not very organized if you haven't gotten that hint from me and Ryan talking. I'm a little bit more freeform. So, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about another.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah, so another con is that the physical loading and unloading of your vehicle and the physical labor that it has on you. We deal with pottery, so it's clearly not light. It's always going to have
Exactly.
some sort of a weight. It's always going to take a lot of effort to set up your booth and tear down your booth. So you really have
Yeah,
to keep that
and
in
you're
mind.
often the first people there or the last people packed up at the end of the day because you have individual pieces you have to be sure that they're not going to break. So, yeah, it's not uncommon to be some of the last folks there at the end of the day. And you improve that over time. Like you decide, oh, I've got this humongous bin that fits so many pots. And then once you get everything in there, you're like, oh crap, I can't even pick this thing up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what do you
and,
use for...
if I put it on
You use totes, right?
So, yeah, I use plastic totes, and they've changed over time a little bit. I mean, I used to use the cardboard boxes, like the first show I had. That gets old super quickly. Cardboard boxes and newspaper wrapping each piece, because you don't even know what you're looking at when you get a box out. I mean, you get it kind of organized, but that gets old quickly. Then you get I have the plastic totes, which are just those Rubbermaid totes that you would like store whatever in. Some people get the heavy duty ones because they want to make sure that they're super secure and stuff. Those take up too much room for me, so I don't get the super heavy duty ones.
The yellow and black
slowly
ones.
Started, yeah. So I slowly improved that over time, and then I, used to have those really long under the bed boxes that you would put like tissue wrapping paper in for Christmas.
Yeah.
But those are awkward. Like I don't even know how wide they're probably like 4 foot wide or whatever.
They're 4 feet wide, yeah.
Yeah, so they're awkward. Like they don't go on a dolly easily because they're so damn wide. And then when you're picking them up, it's like super awkward and wide. So I've kind of transitioned to smaller ones that are about half that width, and I just have more of them. So each one holds like 15 mugs.
What do you put between the mugs?
I have cardboard. I made cardboard dividers out of old Amazon boxes that I got. So,
oh, that's good.
Or a thicker box that I got from something else, like a refrigerator, dishwasher, or something like that. That's a little thicker. Yeah. So you improve that over time. So it's less. You kind of realize like, okay, this is too heavy, so I'm going to scale it down. Like they don't take up any more space, and they're smaller, so they're a little more agile and mobile throughout the car when I'm loading the vehicle, so they can fit in different areas.
Yeah, so I'm going to say my evolution of packing, because I'm not as organized as him, and I also well, this might, it helps. Like I wrapped everything, and I did put them in big Rubbermaid totes, but I like wrapped everything in paper and blah, blah, blah. That lasted one show. A single show. I decided after that it was worth my time if something broke. I was like, I am not going to be the last person to pack up, and it is worth my time if one mug breaks. I'm okay with that because it took me an hour less to pack. So then I went to, which I still recommend, is I went to doing Rubbermaids, and I placed them all in the bin and try to keep them, all of my mugs are about the same height, so keep them about the same height. And then I put a cardboard piece down, and then I put more mugs up in that, and then I put another cardboard piece, and then more mugs. So those were good, but they weren't great. The best system that I've had, I think, thus far, is the pepper boxes from Costco. And you can still put the pepper boxes from Costco. There's very specific vegetable boxes from Costco. They are the right height for a 4-inch mug. and they stack on top and they lock into each other. So you can put all your pieces in there. If you really wanted to get corrugated cardboard, you could, and just like kind of weave it in and out of your mugs. And
Right.
then, so corrugated cardboard is actually really nice for that. And then you can just stack them on top of each other and put them into the van, and they're compressed down and they're super sturdy. Now, if you do this route, they're kind of
But
like
wait,
apple boxes too.
what texture are they made of? Are they cardboard or are they
They're
plastic?
cardboard. They're cardboard, but they're
Okay.
high quality cardboard. And if you do this route, you have to go around them a couple times with clear tape so the cardboard stays together. But I've gone through 3 full seasons with the same cardboard boxes, and they are
Nice.
magnificent.
That's
They're
awesome.
great. Yeah, so those are the
Given
best
that you
ones.
have, yeah, given that you have, it fits your vehicle specifications, kinda, and you're not putting a ton of other stuff on top that could like push down and smash or whatever.
Well, I'll stack
And
them
it
7
depending on the
high.
shape of your mugs are
Yes.
mostly kind of bulbous shape, right? So they're kind of wider in the middle, and the
Hmm.
the tops are not clanking together. So
Exactly.
that might
So
be different for like me.
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely depends on your mugs, and I stack them like 7 high without an issue. They're made to be pretty durable. Now I use bread trays that like the Fran's Bakery or the bakery trays that are
Right.
plastic, and those stack on top of each other. They're okay, but they're a little big, so they get kind of heavy. And you can buy those for like $10 a piece.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so definitely figure out what works for you. Efficiencies in your packing and your vehicle load up is definitely important so that you can get to the show and get in and out of there and build some consistencies with your loading unloading, because it takes a long time and a lot of work to do that. So fewer trips back and forth from the vehicle, and if you
Yep.
can't fit a big dolly in the car, then you got to figure out another way to do it. You get a smaller like foldable dolly that's doesn't carry as much, but it fits
Yeah.
in your vehicle, so you can take some of that effort off you. So yeah,
Uline
that's
has
stuff to
really good
consider.
folding carts, and so does Harbor Freight and Costco, I think. They have really good folding carts
Yeah.
that fit into your vehicle well.
Yeah. So another big one in here is just the amount of equipment and things that you need for a booth. So we're talking tent, we're talking shelving, tables, weights, tablecloths, bags, packing material, business cards, cash box,
Tape,
all the above, everything, tape, toolbox, all that kind of
snacks,
stuff.
snacks.
Yeah, bungee cords, all that kind of stuff that you need, that adds up. Especially if you want it to look consistent, you're not getting all your stuff secondhand or getting it from the Goodwill or whatever. I mean, that might work in the short term, and you might be able to cover some of that up with tablecloths to make them look a little nicer. But I mean, you're going to invest over time and, improve it over time, because you're going to say, oh, that looks like crap, or I need to improve this, or, spice up your booth a little bit. So there's going to be things that you're going to get right out of the gate that you're going to improve over time for sure.
Make sure you have a good tent.
But yeah. Yeah. My tent, so my first show, I got one of those Quest tents from Dick's Sporting Goods, which is kind of the baseline tent that you could get. That's a 10 by 10, and it's got the angled legs. So that's like not good if you're
worst
going to be
tent.
doing this. Yeah. That's good for like backyard barbecuing and stuff. But when we're talking long days and stuff and shows, and it's going to look more professional, like with a white top tent or whatever, that's
Yeah.
going to look better. And honestly, the angled legs, you're losing some space there, and the legs aren't as durable or like stand up. The one leg that I had on that angled one like broke, because
A lot
they're
of
not
shows,
they're not the most durable.
yeah, a lot of shows won't even let you in if you don't have a high quality tent. I know that Trimline is the show standard for like super huge shows. Those are the ones that are domed. They have the curved top, and they don't have crossbars as much. You you put them together. They're not an easy up per se, but you kind of snap them together, and they're really strong. So those are like industry standard for shows, like hardcore shows. But getting like an ABC canopy or one from Costco, a business Costco, those are pretty good. Usually they run from like $200 to $300. Or you can go middle of the road, which is what I have. And I wouldn't recommend doing this until you know that you're going to keep on doing shows. My tents cost me $700 a piece. So they are
Damn.
I know. They're stainless steel. They are super sturdy. I could hang off of them, and I'm not light. I could hang off of them if I wanted to. The reason that I got them was because I had hanging shelves in my booth for space saving and because they look better. So I needed the support from the tents, and I have two of them.
That's crazy.
So, and that was with a 20% discount. By the way, if you ever buy anything from easyup.com, make sure you look for their coupons because they almost always have a 20% off coupon for online. Don't buy from a third party. Buy from EasyUp directly. Their customer service is fantastic. That's my
So
plug.
yours is an EasyUp brand. It's like a higher quality EasyUp brand.
My tent is an EasyUp Eclipse. That's the tent version.
Nice.
There's other ones that they have they say are stronger, and they have these aluminum they're very light tents. I've heard that those buckle a lot faster than the stainless steel does, so you have to kind of keep that in mind. But tents can run you a lot of money, and you kind of get what you pay for as far as tents go.
Yeah, that's true.
So paying $200
that's how you got
for
your
a tent. Yes.
That's how you got your orange and green tent, right?
Yeah, so yeah, my
because
tent.
yours have orange and green legs. I was like, how did you get that? $700 get you some orange legs.
Yeah, my tent frames at the show that I do, the canopy tops have to be white, but the tent frames can be whatever color. And so I asked the director, I was like, "Can I get neon orange and neon green legs?" And she's like, "I don't care." And so I have one orange tent and one green tent. And I love them, and they fit perfectly. But it's really look into the tents if you're gonna do this full time. Like I said, trim line is industry standard. That's what most people that are like hoity-toity show goers don't get anything but trim lines. My tent's been through 40 mile an hour winds without an issue. So, but I don't live in hurricane areas. And I don't live
it totally
in
depends on where you're at. So if you don't get a lot of, the more shows you do, the more weather you're going to see, and the more you're going to be holding your tent down if you don't have good weights.
Wait.
I feel bad talking about my tent now.
Don't feel bad. No, you have a normal tent. It's totally fine.
No, mine's a white. So mine's like a middle of the road tent, like she's saying. I had the Quest first, and then I got one off of Amazon that's a Pro Source. I got it on sale for like $110. It's a 10 by 10, and it's got the thing in the middle that pushes the roof up, which is nice. So when you expand it actually pushes the roof up like 2 foot.
Yeah, mine has that too. I'm not saying that you should get a $700 tent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I do the same show every weekend from May to October. So
for 3 days as well. So
for 3 to 4 days, and I'm invested in this show. So I needed a tent that was going to last me 10 years, and that tent's going to last me 10 years. And I've seen, a lot of the vendors out there have the tents just like you. I just needed a support. I just needed a tent that was going to support my shelving system. And so it was specifically for engineering purposes. So I'm just saying there's like a ton of different levels that you can buy.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can grow over time. You don't have to wait for the thing to break before you decide I want to get a better tent or something like that.
Totally.
But we definitely would recommend out of the gate, get something with a white top, because it's going to make your stuff inside look a lot brighter. It's not going to cast bad shadows and darkness under the tent. I think white top is definitely a way to go for sure.
You should at least be paying $100 for your tent. You should at least be paying $100.
Yeah. And think about the footprint it's going to make inside your vehicle too. How big of a space do you have to work with? Because mine fits nicely and it's in one of those long bags. So, okay, so tent, weights. Becca mentioned weights. Have good weights. Don't have big gallon jugs of water that are at each foot, because that's not enough.
50 pounds.
People will dispute how much you need. It again depends on your weather issues, but Becca says 50 pounds. I have the cement-filled 4-inch PVC pipe that's probably 2.5 foot long or something like that, with eye bolts in the end that I bungee to the top of my frame and attached to the legs. So those probably are about 35 or 40 maybe per leg. So.
Yeah, I say 35 to 50 pounds. Also, the reason that you need weights is not for you. Remember that. The reason that you need weights on your tent is so that your tent doesn't fly into somebody else's tent. Because if there is a bad storm, you're going to be... You want your tent to implode on itself instead of moving into all the other tents around you. I know that seems contradictory, but if you really just don't want to hurt the tents around you, because their stuff could be super valuable and you have to pay out for that. And that goes into insurance.
Yeah. So a lot of shows will require that. A lot of the shows that I do don't require it, because I do like a lot of indie markets and stuff like that. There is one later this year that's a coffee festival that's a nicer event that requires it, so I had to get some ACT insurance. You could just look up ACT. I want to say it's actinsurance.com.
It's cheap.
For like artists and short-term kind of insurance that you need, liability and stuff like that. But yeah, that's something you should look up, that you got to handle insurance. If they ask for it, don't try to like get around it and not get it. Again, with the kind of related to insurance is you got to get your sales tax information figured out. So you have to need like vendors' license numbers and, stuff like that you need to take care of beforehand. Like each of our states in Ohio and Kentucky require a vendor's license ID or whatever to be able to sell, because they want you to, you're responsible for the sales tax. They want to make sure you have a sales ID so that you can report the taxes appropriately. So you have to handle that yourself. I don't know what is it like in Washington. Do you have anything? I'm sure you have to have some kind of a sales ID.
I think we have to have a business license. We all have. Yeah, I think we just have to have a business license. I know for sure that your state and my state are very different in the way that we conduct small businesses. Each state's different with the way they handle, how you're going to handle sales tax and stuff like that. So another thing for cons, it kind of goes into it, the long hours that it takes. Besides the physical demand for doing all this stuff, you have long hours that you're doing this thing away from, other obligations on weekends normally, away from making more product, or away from your family, or away from your home where you're traveling, or stuff like that. So, anything else you have about the long hours? I mean, I'm sure it's pretty grueling doing those long hours for you every day, 3 days a weekend, right? I feel like they're shorter hours than my regular workday, but I think that it is physically tolling or mentally tolling on me, because you talk to so many people during the day that at the end of the day you're like, I really have no need to talk to anyone. But what I enjoy is that for me, our shows end at 6 and it's 3 days, so I don't have to pack up at the end of the day. So I can just go home.
Great.
But if you have a 1 day show that you have to pack up at the end of the day, it takes a lot. You have to be there. You have to set up, especially if you're not a morning person. And then, like Ryan, we're both not morning people.
A lot of my shows are 1 day shows, though.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy it, though. I enjoy getting up early for a show because I know that, I know what I'm in for. And I know I've prepared. I prepared the day before, and I'm like, I got to be on. I turn on some music I turn a consistent music on the way to every show to kind of get me in the mood or whatever. Do you want to guess what the music? You probably don't even know what music I listen to. Do you want to guess what I put on?
No, I don't want to guess because I know I'll get it wrong. What do you listen to?
So it sounds funny. I listen to Kid Cudi, which is like hip hop music. He's got kind of higher music and just kind of like some mellow music and stuff like that. So I listen to that usually to get me. That's kind of my show music, my hype up music. And yeah, so even if you're not a morning person, I mean, you kind of got to do what you got to do. So, plan ahead so that you have ample time to get set up. Don't feel like, oh, I need that extra sleep. I can't process because you'd be, in worse shape if you were still setting up, and you're halfway done at showtime.
Treat it like the first
you're not
day
going
of
to look very professional
every time.
Yeah. Even if you, oh man, I had an issue at a show earlier this year where it was my first time going to this one show. I kind of knew generally what part of town it was, but I got messed up because Google Maps didn't tell me to get off at this one exit. And I got backtracked and I went like 10 miles out of the way because I went so far and then I had to backtrack. So it set me off like 20 minutes. So stuff like that can happen on your way to the show.
Totally.
And you gotta kind of just roll with it. Get there early.
Yeah, that's the stress of going to new shows every single time. That's what really got me. It's super stressful. And I was like super on point for the first 3 shows maybe that I ever did. And then I started becoming later and later and later because I stopped caring as much, and which is bad. But so don't do that. I'm just saying don't do that. Like I'm totally one of those people that I'll read the instructions about the show the day before and then realize that I could have set up on that day. And I'm like, dang it. That's definitely happened.
Dang.
And
yeah,
but
each one's different for sure.
Yeah, I get up. I have a little bit of a different situation. So I get up at 4:30 to get to my show, to get to Leavenworth at 7. So I'm not driving that whole time, but I usually have to unload a kiln, and I load it all into my car, and then I drive to Leavenworth. And I've done the drive so many times that I have to take caffeine pills and listen to podcasts so that I can stay awake. So I don't really amp myself up. Sometimes I do listen to Shania Twain, though.
You're not amping yourself up for a 75-mile drive. You might amp yourself up for like a 20-minute drive, but not that far.
I like to amp myself up to stay awake.
Yeah. And the reason Becca can't go, you might say, oh, well, why doesn't she go the night before? Because it costs money to go the night before, and that's time away from her making or her getting her orders done and ready for taking and packing for the show. Like, well, yeah, you're talking about a whole extra day. Uh-huh. Yeah, so she teaches classes the night before. So, yeah, that's something to take into consideration. We didn't really talk about the expenses, but expenses is a reality too. There's expenses of physically driving to the show. You have to pay for your booth up front normally. I don't really know too many shows that they collect it kind of after. Becca's, they take $25 for her booth and every weekend, and then they take 20%. So that's not usually a typical way that you would do outdoor shows and stuff.
No, indoor shows though. There's a ton of Christmas indoor shows that are central cashier that I've seen that are, I mean, if they're doing most of the good markets that I've seen that are indoor Christmas markets are central cashier. So, and those are really great because then you can just set up your stuff and leave.
Yeah, I love it.
And then just come back and
I've done one like that.
It.
I've done one like that, and
really
they,
nice.
Yeah, it was very similar to your situation where I paid $25 for the table or shelving or whatever at Queen City Clay, and then they had a central cashier, and they're getting 20%. I mean, they're basically, I'm happy that 20% is going to them for them handling the point of sale, the packing, all that stuff. Like, I'm fine with that. And I'm a little hands off. I can walk around, talk to the other makers that are there. I can man my booth and talk to customers when they're nearby. It's just a different type of show, maybe. And also, it's 20%. Like, if you sell nothing or you sell, like, very little stuff, you're in it for $25 plus the 20%. Like, it's not a big... That's a nice...
Low risk.
I like the way that breaks down. Yeah.
Low risk. But if you sell
Um,
$6,000, you're paying, almost $600. No, $1,200
yeah.
in
So that goes with it
booth
too.
fee.
But yeah, most of them you pay for your booth space up front, which could be a $10 booth. It could be a $50 booth for a day. It could be a $300 booth or a $600 booth. Like, they range based on what type of show it is, how reputable it is, I guess. Whether it's a church show like Becca talked about before. But I mean, those are good for like profits. I mean,
I love
it
church
might be
shows.
seem yeah. It might seem like a con, but I mean, if you're paying $10 for a booth and you sell like $300 worth of stuff, that's a huge profit. Or $700 worth of stuff. Like, you're reaching this market that maybe you wouldn't have reached before. A lot of those I'll stray away from because they don't market it very well, and I feel like a lot of them sell little hobbyist kind of stuff, like people that knit stuff for fun, or little
Keychains and
trinkets or keychains, or they're reselling stuff that they buy a big quantity of and they're just reselling it. So it's kind of up to your discretion, kind of
I will
whether it's
say
worth it
this.
for you to do those shows or not.
I will say this. If you go to a church and that church is having a show, you should definitely do it. Because if anybody in that church knows you and they see you at that show, they're going to buy something from you. The first time I did a show at my church, it was all these old, like, these pots. It was like right after my second sale that I did that I made a bunch of money at. And it was like all these mismatched random pots. And I think I made $1,300 for a $50 booth. Like,
Oh my
killed
gosh.
it. Killed it.
Man,
but
I need to do a church show.
Well, Ryan, you need to go to church first. So
I don't go to church, so I'm not a church goer and all that stuff. So if they don't know me, I'm just some Joe Schmo. I mean, you're among people that are, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you go to church, if you're a person that goes to church, and your church has a show, you better freaking do it, because
yeah, that's a good point.
There is no loss in that. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfection.
And this kind of ties in with one of the last ones here, that you're going to get weird or strange or rude comments from people. So if they don't know your work or they don't know what you're doing, I mean, some of those people at those church shows may not know like the art and stuff side of it or the craft part of it. So they're like, do you have a berry bowl or a bacon cooker thing or whatever? They're asking for certain things, or they're just like, do you have this in bright red or something like that? You're going to get those kind of comments from people. You just got to kind of roll with it. And
patience.
Do you make all this? You're going to get comments like that a lot. So it's going to drain you a little bit, and you're going to hear the same ones over and over. But just realize that all these people treat them as if they have no idea what this thing is. They don't know anything about pottery or painting or whatever, or photography, or, they don't know anything about it. So be kind to them that, they're willing to come into your booth and talk to you.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and I have a little plug too. Stick to your prices. If you're going to do a show, stick to your prices. Because for one, discounts don't pay the bills. And two, people will either respect you or they'll walk away. But you'd be surprised how many people respect the fact that you're confident in your prices and your product. I had some lady come up to me once and she'd be like, she had a sponge holder and she goes, this is really great. I just don't think it's worth $15. I said, you know what? I understand it's worth $15 to me because I put a lot more effort into it than you probably think I do. And she goes, well, would you take less money for it? And I go, no, I won't. And she picked one up and she goes, okay, well, I guess I'll get one. And I go, and then she brings it up again and she goes, are you sure you won't? Great. Are you sure you won't, like, if I get two, will you give me a discount? I go, nope, there's no discounts on it. And I shit you not. She goes, good for you. Good for you for sticking to your guns. And she bought the sponge holder.
Love
And
it.
that was the
Love it.
most glorious sale I've ever had. But
That'll give you the most confidence, man.
Yeah. Stick to your guns and be confident in your work, because if you're wishy-washy in your prices, people see that. And
Yeah.
I've had somebody walk away because I told them that I wouldn't give an item to them for free, you know. It becomes
Yeah.
really awkward for them.
You have enough discounts in your stuff. You have a second spin. You have things that you
I
buy
do.
3 for $10 or whatever. Like your prices are reasonable, and honestly, they're probably too low in my opinion. But you have reasons behind why you price them that way, and you know, you've built discounts into your pricing by building more quantity of certain items and stuff like that. So it's not like you're completely saying every single piece is worth the same value.
Right.
On this day versus this day.
Yeah.
But you have, you know, there's a reason why you price it that way. It's not just you just pulled a number out of your ass and you're hoping that people are going to pay for it. So,
yeah. And well, you know, and people sometimes they don't really realize that where they're going to is not a swap meet. You know, sometimes they don't realize that they're dealing with like actual art or crafts, you know, products, crafty products and stuff.
exactly.
And so you just got to give them a little grace, but you have to be firm. Don't back down.
And the show you go to may differ on that. Like, it may give them more feeling like they can negotiate. Like the show that I was at this past weekend, the guy behind me was selling thrift store kind of upselling or flip stuff. So he was buying stuff at thrift stores and curating a selection of sports memorabilia stuff. And he kept saying, as you notice, there's no prices on anything. Everything's negotiable. Let me know and we'll figure something out. We'll give you a good deal. We're trying to not take as much stuff home. So that might be at at a show that you go to, and maybe that works for you, maybe not. I would say, if you're hand making stuff, definitely pick prices and stick to them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, we can probably wrap up for the day. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. And hope you got some good nuggets out of this. We're looking forward to doing more of these for ways you can sell your pots, because or sell your work in general. There's so many different ways to do this and pros and cons for all of it. So
cool. Yeah, that was fun. Sweet. All right.
Welcome to Five Lines Pottery, where everything is microwave and dishwasher safe. Pottery is fun to hold, but if you break it, it's sold. For the convenience and safety of others, please keep your hands and feet in the booth at all times. And remember, the longer you stay, the more you pay.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. You can reach Ryan at RD Ceramics on Instagram and me at 5 Lines Pottery Studio on Instagram. We look forward to continuing this podcast, and we are having so much fun. I hope you continue to listen and remember to share it with your friends.